When I first looked at the Angular Quick Start tutorial, I was approaching it in the same way as most developers. The tutorial is brilliant, but it doesn't assume any specific development environment. It is important to realize that an ASP.NET Core application can access anything within the www.root folder, and only things within the www.root folder. If you didn't realize that before, then you will once you have created an ASP.NET Core project and start adding the Angular framework to the node modules. One of the first questions you're going to ask is, how can I access the node modules from within my running application unless I copy them to the www.root folder? Normally, you can't. However, there are some tricks you can play that will allow the router to serve up these files to you from the node modules folder. That's good, because copying these files all the time to a place where the running application can get to them would be a maintenance nightmare and a complete waste of time. You should understand that access to the node modules folder is only necessary when running in debug mode. That is, before you create a release build. You should think of creating the release build as a compilation process, as it is with C#. What does that mean exactly? That means in debug mode, you're not interested in compressing, bundling, or bumping up the version number. And why should you be? Shouldn't your first priority be to get the application working before creating a release build? The release build process can be a complex process that does many things. It's more than compressing and bundling. In fact, to do it right, you need to bump up the version number, squash the HTML and CSS, enable the production mode, and create an application manifest, all during the release build process. All of these things are triggered by a get hook. More on that later. Many of the developers I've spoken to are bundling every time, even in debug mode, to avoid the issue of how to get to the node modules. Completely and totally a waste of time and machine cycles. And it slows down the workflow. Realize that the client-side development is not too much different than the server-side development, and that you first get your application working in a debug mode, where you can set breakpoints and do analysis. Then you create the release build. Anyway, back to addressing the issue of how to get to my node modules in a debug build. Well, the two files that are involved are the startup.cs and the systemjs.config.js. First, let's take a look at the startup.cs file.